everyone, so this is going to be our last video for upper appendicular. So last video we talked about scapula and humerus and clavicle, so this time we're going to talk about your forearm bones, which is the ulna and radius. We're going to talk about your carpals, metacarpals, and phalange bones. So have your diagrams in front of you, and let's go ahead and start labeling. If you look at A, we're looking at this top portion here of the ulna. By the way, the ulna, quick way to figure out which one you're looking at, the ulna has a U shape for ulna. And part of that U shape, which is right here, is our olecranon process. Your olecranon process is what's going to kind of fit against the olecranon fossa of the humerus. And this is also the reason why our elbow in our anatomical terms is referred to as olecranon. B, on the other hand, is going to fit against the trochlea of the humerus, and that's why this is going to be referred to as the trochlear notch. And then C right here is our coronoid process. Not to be confused with the coronoid of the mandible. I know that is a bit confusing, but we're talking about the coronoid process of the ulna that is going to fit into the coronoid fossa of the humerus. All right. D here, this guy right here is our radial notch. It's also here in this view. This is an important region because this is where the radial head is going to rest, which is actually labeled F over here on the radius. This is the head of the radius. And then once you move below the radial notch on the ulna, we have this tubercle, which is the tuberosity of the ulna. From there we move to H, was the interosseous margin. This is where we're going to have a membrane that connects both our ulna and radius. And then G over here on the radius is our radial tuberosity. And then if we scroll down here, F, we're looking at the head. I know it's kind of odd because it's opposite, it's in the opposite direction of the radial head. J is our styloid process. This time it's the styloid process of the ulna and not of the skull, but they do resemble one another because they are quite pointy. Right, you can see it on this side as well. We then have I, which is the ulnar notch. The ulnar notch is on the radius, and that's because that's where the head of the ulna is going to kind of rest against. And then here Also on the radius, we have the styloid process of the radius. So that covers our forearm, or the antebrachial. Let's go ahead and take a look at the manual, or the hand. Starting up with A, we have the phalanges. Phalanges is going to be the plural version. If you want to use that singular, it is phalanx or phalanx. And we number them. So first phalanx, second phalanx, third, etc., starting with the thumb, which is 1. All right. From there, we have the thumb, which is a bit different because it has 2 phalanges attached to its metacarpal, and so we refer to that as the pollex. All right, so the first metacarpal, or the metacarpal of your thumb, is the pollex. And then, if you can see here, each metacarpal has this rounded region known as the head. C, we're looking at this straightened region of the metacarpal, and that's the shaft. And then the region of the metacarpal that is going to join with the carpals is the base. From there, we have 8 carpals. However, from the posterior view, you can only see 7 of them. So let's go ahead and label these carpals. And actually, let me see if I can go ahead and get these going in different colors for you. E right here, this is the hamate, H-A-M-A-T-E. Hopefully you can see that writing. Lateral to the hamate is going to be F, which is the capitate. And lateral to the capitate, we have J. And J is the trapezoid, just like the shape. The furthest lateral of the carpals is going to be the trapezium. Now I know that it's a little bit confusing having trapezium and trapezoid next to each other. One easy way to remember which is the trapezium, which is more lateral, kind of rhymes with thumb. So the trapezium and thumb, they're the most lateral, so then trapezoid is going to be inner. If we go more proximal, we've got this guy here, which is L. This is our scaphoid. If we move medial to the scaphoid, we've got H. H is the lunate. And lastly, running out of colors. And then the furthest medial is G, and G is the triquetrum. Okay. The only carpal that we can't see in this view is the pisiform, but we can see the pisiform in the anterior view. So let's go ahead and scroll down. And here we go. This guy right here is the pisiform. And the pisiform is actually a little pea-sized extension. It's kind of fused in a way to the triquetrum, and that's why I've got it in the same color as the triquetrum. So hopefully that'll help you associate them with one another. I'm going to stick with the color coding here. That is, if I can find all the same colors. We've got K, which is the trapezium. And then we have the scaphoid. The trapezoid is J. Up here is the hamate. We've got the lunate. And then missing one, capitate, right here. All right, now we've got 8 bones in a very small area, so there's multiple different sayings out there that you can look up, but the one that I like is going to relate the bone's name to where it's located according to the thumb, as well as your pinky finger. So I'm going to just go in a general color. You all can color code on your own. But if we start with the scaphoid is L. You'll notice it's also quite large. Okay, the scaphoid is going to be the more proximal of the carpals that are on the thumb side. All right. And so scaphoid starts with S, which is where we're going to get the word straight. Next we have the lunate. And in our little saying, that's going to stand for line. We've got the triquetrum, which is going to stand for 2. And we have the pisiform, which is going to stand for pinky, which conveniently it's on the pinky side. We're going to move up to hamate, which stands for here. We have capitate. It's going to stand for comes. And Trapezoid stands for the, and trapezium stands for thumb. All right. So if we start with the scaphoid, we can say straight line to pinky, here comes the thumb, and it really is, you start here at the scaphoid, you make a straight line over to the pinky, and then you move up and you're coming back around to the thumb. So if it works for you, awesome. If it doesn't, you know, maybe you can come up with your own little saying or something that's going to help you remember the carpal bones. Let's move back to the phalanges and the pollex though. I have one last comment I want to make about them, and then we will have finished up the upper appendicular. So again, we've got our first, second, third, fourth, and fifth metacarpals, but we're specifically going to call the thumb metacarpal the pollex. Okay, we talked about that in the posterior view. The other thing we mentioned in the posterior view is that the top portions of your fingers, the phalanx or the phalanges, each have, you know, 3 parts. And so the furthest one on each one is going to be the distal phalanx. We have the middle phalanx. And then we have the proximal. So not only do we talk about each individual finger with a number, but we can talk about each bone that makes up the finger. Now the thumb or the pollex is a little bit different because we don't have a middle one, we just have distal and proximal. But how we discuss these bones is pretty simple once you know how they're numbered. So for example, I'm going to shade in this one here. If somebody were to break this specific bone, you look at which number phalanx does it coincide with, and then which number is it. So this one particular would be the 4th middle phalanx, right? Or for example, this one would be our 2nd proximal phalanx. So that's how we know which specific bone is involved, because the hands have a lot of bones. I mean, you've got 8 carpals, 5 metacarpals, and then you've got, what's that? 12 bones within your phalanges, and then 2 more in the pollex. So there's a lot going on there, and hand injuries are very common, so we need a way that we can talk about each individual bone, but in a very methodical manner. All right, so as you go through these, make sure that you check back with the models, and if you have any questions, just let me know.